Good evening, everybody. This is Patrick from the Poison Pen Bookstore in Scottsdale, Arizona, and we are really delighted to have Jenna Blum with us this evening. She's going to be talking about the brand new book, Murder Your Darlings. And Jenna very kindly signed a whole batch of books for us. And so we have some signed copies. I'll go ahead and put a link in the comments field on YouTube and Facebook if you'd like to purchase one of our copies. They're going very fast. Um, and joining us also is my friend Karen Odden, novelist who has a brand new book coming out this summer from Soho Press. And she's written a number of novels. Here's the most recent, I believe, Under the Veiled Moon. We still have a signed copy or two left. So I'll put links to Karen's books as well. And anyway, Karen's going to be doing the interview today, and I'll be lurking off screen. So if you have any questions, go ahead and type them in, and Karen will bring me back on screen towards the end of the hour. So, Karen, over to you.
Thanks so much, Patrick. So I have to say that I am beyond thrilled to be interviewing Jenna. We have a mutual friend in common, Edwin Hill. I hope he's actually out there today. He may not be, but if he is, let's all look. If he is, he has some terrific thrillers too. So and he's got a new one coming out. I think this spring. What happened next? I think is the name of it. Anyway, when he heard that I was going to be interviewing Jenna, who I've never met before, he says, "Oh, you two are going to love each other. She's smart and she's really funny. You're going to have a great time." So here we go. So Murder Your Darlings, I'm just going to give a little preface here, is a book that is imbued with everything writing. I'm not saying it's a thriller just for writers, although writers will get an extra kick out of it. It's got editors, it's got writing groups, it's got MFA programs, it's got publishers, blurbs, reviews, gossip, Publishers Weekly, I mean, the whole bit. So I think especially for a book like this, I'm really fascinated to find out if you could just say a little bit about your writing journey and what sort of brought you to the point where you wanted to write a book that was all writing.
Absolutely, Karen. It's so nice to meet you. Edwin was like, "Oh my God, you guys are never going to stop talking. So buckle up, everybody." And I'm so grateful to the Poison Pen for having me. You guys are so hallowed and so revered and made me feel so important by having books delivered to my house. Although my UPS guy, whose name is James, is like, "What with the books already? what are these boxes?" I'm like, "I'm a writer." Yeah, that happens. So thank you for that. And Edwin's book, I should say, is as you said, What Happened Next comes out March 17th. And I'm thrilled to know you are also a 26er. And I'm going to send you a t-shirt because there are a lot of amazing books coming out in 26. So
Awesome.
stay tuned. So my writing journey started when I was 4, or maybe like when I was born. My dad was a career writer. He was a journalist for CBS and wrote all of the Watergate and Vietnam stuff for Walter Cronkite. So my earliest memories are punctuated with the sound of his typewriter. And I hope somebody here remembers what a typewriter is. And so all I wanted to do was grow up and be a writer like my dad. And so that was all I basically did. I won the 17 magazine fiction contest when I was 16. And I decided that the world owed me a living in writing, only to find out that the world owed me a living in food service, which is what I did for the next 10 years while I was trying to get short stories published and books published. I did get a master's degree from Boston University. Finally, I bludgeoned my way into that program. I applied 6 times before they finally gave up and let me in. And then it was a matter of time until I published my first novel right before I was 30, I want to say. And that was historical fiction. And so Murder Your Darlings is a big pivot for me because not only is it my first thriller, but that is the big pivot, is that it has deviated from what I've been doing for the last years.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so what was the second part of your question? Sorry.
I guess I kind of want to, I'm just curious about how you got, for example, because I think if I remember correctly, I think I read your first historical. I haven't read your other books. I haven't read your memoir, but it was the one, Those Who Save Us. Is it the
Yes.
name
Oh
of
my
it?
God, your memory is
Okay.
phenomenal. Yes, yes. Thank you.
Okay.
I remember the question that you asked me also. Sorry.
Mhm.
jog my own memory like a little bit. So I always wanted to write a book about writers because I love reading books about writers. Like my favorite book when I was little was Harriet the Spy, which led to me to creep around in the neighbor's bushes with a composition book and take notes on everybody. And I grew up reading Stephen King, and I loved Stephen King not because he was writing horror, but because he was writing about writers. Like he wrote The Shining, which everybody thinks is about a haunted hotel, but it's really about an alcoholic writer with a troublesome wife and kid, and Misery, and like the Dead Zone and the Dark Half, and Meg Wolitzer's The Plot. And it wasn't until The Wife, and I read Jean Hanff Korlitz's The Plot when it came out, and I thought, wait a minute, like Jean is my contemporary. This book is so sharp, it's so funny, it's so incisive about the publishing industry. If Jean can do this, can I do this? So I called her, I stalked her, I got her number from a mutual friend. She'd never heard of me before. And I called her and said, did you get pushback when you switched from writing, quote, literary fiction to writing thrillers? And she said, I just write what I write. Other people market it. You should write what you write. So I started writing Murder Your Darlings, and I had never had so much fun writing a book in my entire life. Like I snort laughed on every single page, and it was such a delight to just unpack my own life for readers and really give them the inside scoop on what it's like to be a writer.
It does feel like, especially that you said that you wanted to write since you were 4, and that you sort of grew up basically listening to the clink of your father's typewriter. It does sound like you really mind your own personal life for Simone, who is one of the two main characters in this book. There's Simone and William. And I mean, did you feel like Simone was really just sort of a part of you
Oh,
when you were writing? Yeah.
yeah, she's actually
Yeah.
me. Like she's completely me. There are actually
Okay.
3. I mean, the rabbit would take umbrage with you saying there are only 2 narrators, and she would be
Yes,
mad.
that's true.
And there's a third narrator named the rabbit who stalks both Sam, Simone,
Uh-huh.
and
Uh-huh.
William, and
Uh-huh.
3 point of view characters here. And
Uh-huh.
Sam is just unabashedly me. Like people are like, "Is there a part of you in her?" I'm like, "No, this is like
It's
my life
all.
exactly." And I will say that be careful to say that none of the things that happened to her in this book have happened to me, but she
I'm
is
glad
so,
to hear that.
yeah, right. I don't think he was well adjusted for somebody who's gone through all of this stuff. But her writer life is exactly mine, and the trappings of her life are so much mine that at one point I was doing a podcast, and the interviewer said, "Oh my gosh, that's Simone Vetiver's fireplace over your shoulder." And I thought, "Oh yeah, I forgot I put my apartment in this book." So if you want to know again what the writing life is really like from soup to nuts, from like sitting in this chair where I wrote this book in my yoga pants, which I actually am wearing, to going on tour and what that's like, or being on deadline or under contract, writer competition, teaching, writer envy, all of that stuff is in this book. And I hope it's a love letter to the weird and wonderful life writers have.
That is so funny you said that, because when I finished the book, I thought this is on the one hand sort of an expose, but it is also a love letter. It's actually maybe not even a love letter, but like an act of sympathy and transparency for every writer out there who is trying to write a book. Now, I didn't publish my first book until I was 50, so I was much later. But I mean, I remember that feeling of you're sort of scratching and clawing your way and trying to figure out, okay, just change the paragraph. Did that make it better or worse? I don't know. And you've got so much of that in a very sort of tender, transparent, vulnerable way in the character of Sam that I kind of felt like it was sort of this expose love letter, but also just an act of sympathy almost for all the
Thank
writers out
you.
there.
I
Yeah,
hope
I
so.
loved
I
that
hope the
part.
writers feel that way, that the creatives
Hmm.
feel that way. Because the great thing about being a creative is that it offers you this sort of magical life. And the hard thing
Hmm.
about being a creative is you're the only one making the decisions. And if you make the
Hmm.
decisions wrong, whether it's about the business of your life or it's about your authorial decisions or your creative decisions, then you might be messing the thing up, and then it's not going to fly in some way. And that is really tough. But Sam, like one of my favorite scenes for her, chapters for her, is actually a sort of a quiet chapter when she comes home from her 4th book tour, and she's sitting in her apartment, and she has to get started on her 5th book, which she hates, despises, and dreads, but she's under contract for it, and it's due in like 5 months. She hasn't written a word. And it's about her ancestor, Ole Nielsen. And she's false starting terribly. And so she's just like, Ole Nielsen came over from Norway on a ship jet ski, tidal wave. I don't even know. She like gets up and has some bourbon. And I feel like most of us can relate to that and relate what it might be like to go through a master's program or to get that email from your agent that says, do not panic, which of course makes you panic immediately.
Right.
So
Right.
I'm with you. Like we're all in this together.
Yes. Yeah. No, it definitely did. It felt like a sisterhood. And so I kind of want to, before we get to William, um, I want to talk a little bit about the rabbit, who is kind of part of that sisterhood. She's part of the writing community. And talk to me about where she came from.
The rabbit came from nowhere, man. I mean, she came out of nowhere. She is author adjacent, as she says. She's
Mhm.
obsessed with authors. She is a
Mhm.
bookseller. She has her own
Mhm.
personal box cutter, as many booksellers do. I used to be a bookseller at a Borders before they went out of business, and I promise I did not put them out of business, but I loved that job because you were always surrounded by the people of the book, and the rabbit is a fanatical person of the book. And she also is a fanatical stalker of William Corwyn, whom our protagonist Sam gets involved with. So the rabbit, I always knew that Sam and William would have a stalker, or rather that William would have a stalker, and then when Sam got involved with him, she also would inherit this stalker. But I didn't think the rabbit was going to have her own voice in this book until one day I was kind of lying around feeling sorry for myself, like writers do. And I was kind of like, it was a kind of a gray day. I was lying on my couch and I thought, what if the rabbit had her own voice? And I got up, came in this, I keep pointing to my chair, like you can see it, like came into the study, sat down, put my hands on the keyboard and wrote what became the prologue of the book, which is pretty much unchanged. And I felt like I had stuck my hands into an electric socket. Like the rabbit was that powerful a presence, and her voice is not my voice. It's first person. It's not mine. It's the first time I've written in first person since grad school, when I was soundly spanked for that perspective and told never to do it again. And so she became like this force in the novel who I think gives it a lot of its tension, because whatever Sam is doing, the rabbit is right there commenting on it. And whatever William is doing, the rabbit is there giving you sort of the inside scoop on William, who then also parachuted into the novel and demanded his own first person voice. So it got very, like, suddenly very electric in there with all of these people demanding to be heard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know. It was very interesting because the first thing you open up to is, yes, this prologue, and it says prologue, the rabbit. And I was like, are we going to have talking animals in this book? Okay. So I kind of like, and then of course you find out why. You find out why she is, she's called the rabbit. And, and it was interesting because I think sometimes so I happen to write all of my novels in first person, so I would have been very badly spanked at your graduate program.
Yeah, you would.
But what sometimes I find troublesome with three first person narrators is the voices sound similar. Yours do not.
Thank you.
And there's no, there's some books, I think, one of my favorites is The Tenderness of Wolves by Steph Penny. I think she has 5 different narrators, some in third person, some in first. I don't, have you read that one?
No, but that's crazy.
No. It's a great book. It's historical.
Yeah.
You'd probably like it. It's for like
Okay.
1860s, set in
Yeah.
Canada. And there are, I think, 4 or 5 different narrators. You do not get told who's the narrator, but within the first couple lines, you're like, oh, that's it. You know who it is, because
Yep.
the voices are so distinct. And that's kind of magical. Like I go back and I reread that book every so often because I think I want to see how she does it again. But I really appreciated that about your book, because I could hear the rabbit's voice, and I could hear her anxiety. I felt a lot of pain for her from the very beginning, and so I thought that she was really interesting. Okay, so now we got to talk about William. Okay, where did he come from? Because he's a little scary.
Yeah, they should both be scary. Both these first person
Yes.
people should
Yeah.
be scary. And I
Yes.
usually, I mean, I've been writing historical novels in the same very controlled, kind of austere, hopefully elegant third person voice my whole life.
Mm-hmm.
Writing this book was terrifying for me because I'm writing contemporary,
Mm-hmm.
and I gave it to, and I will talk about William, I promise, but I'm still thinking about voice because I don't usually voice shift like this.
Mm-hmm.
And when I gave this to my agent, who thought I was writing historical fiction, and I was like, haha, surprise, you know, um, she said, and she's French. She was like, you know, Jenna, I think this is the smartest thing you have ever done because you finally step out from behind the disguise of historical fiction with the hoop skirt and the corset, and you step into your own voice. It's like, well, you know, there's a stalker, there's a murderer, there's a, you know, which voice do you think is actually mine, Stephanie? Thanks a lot. But I think the Sam voice is probably closest to my contemporary, you know, personal voice, and then the rabbit is the one who speaks truth to power. She comes from a really impoverished background. She comes from a trauma background. She's really gritty. She's doing terrible criminal things. And at the same time, I have great sympathy for her. Like I love her. And she's the person who would come into your kitchen, have a cup of coffee and be like, this effing guy, this guy. I'll tell you about. And William will never ever use a normal word when a $25 word will do. Like he is the most highfalutin, most fatuous, and most charming, and most sexified, and most charismatic, and most, you know, you are the it person in the entire universe. So for people who haven't read the book yet, since it just came out a week ago, or read the jacket copy, William Corwyn is this stratospherically, like Stephen King level successful author whose nickname is the virtuoso because he writes in a different genre every time. And all his books feature female protagonists. And so women love him because they think he has this huge empathic heart toward women. And indeed, he is very attuned to the women in his life who he uses for his own needs, shall we say. And so I did not intend for William to have a point of view. I thought it was going to be Sam. And then I'm like, okay, it's going to be Sam and the rabbit, like the affair through the whole book. Sam does something, the rabbit comments on it, and they bang the ball back and forth. And when I started Act Two, William was like, hello, it is I, William Corwyn, the really important one here. Step aside, and came onto the stage. And I called my editor and said, we have to have a little conversation because William is in the house. And I'm wondering what you think about me giving him his point of view. And she was like, I think that's brilliant. You should totally do it. So when we see things from William's point of view in part two, Sam has been trying to figure out if William is too good to be true when they've had this fledgling relationship because bodies are starting to pile up. And she's like, who is this guy? She has a trauma background. She can't trust her own instincts. And he's just so that guy. And when we read his section, we can answer that question for Sam. Like we see what goes on behind the scenes in William's life and we're like, oh, dang. So it actually puts her in a lot more danger, I think, getting his perspective.
Well, yes, that was one of the things that I thought was so cannily done here, which is that the reader knows more than Sam does. Not immediately, but shortly thereafter. I mean, and if you're paying attention to the rabbit sections, then it becomes, you know, clear really fast. But yeah, so this you know, basically what you're almost waiting is you're waiting for Sam to catch up. You know, and you're rooting for her to catch up, like figure this out, figure out what's going on here. But I want to bring up one thing. Okay, so I'm on page 158. I'm going to put on my glasses because I can't see a damn thing without my glasses. Okay, so this is only about a third of the way down the page, and this is William talking. He says, there's the rub, I think. All of my women have something sad about them, as who doesn't? But they have some special thorn of pain they carry in their core, no matter how bright their smiles. And I underlined this and put a little flag on it because I thought, you know, is it sort of, I mean, one of the things I kind of recognize here with all of these characters, they are all coming from trauma backgrounds. Sam is dragged around from, I think her mother has 6 husbands, and she's dragged from house to house to house. I mean, she has no kind of continuity, which is one of the reasons why when she meets William, he's so solid and he's got this house in Maine and it's just so perfect and gorgeous and everything's great. And he just seems so solid, you know, like a solid person. Partly because I think you've surrounded him with a lot of solid stuff. Like even the fact that he wears a seersucker suit, you know, when he does his readings, you know, this is just a solidness to him. And I think, you know, but at the same time, one of the things that's kind of nicely undercut here is this idea that, you know, do all writers come from, you know, do they all have a thorn?
What a great question. I used to think of this as sort of like the the black rose of trauma survival in some way. And to people who have not come from a trauma background, you can't see it. Like the people who have a trauma background, like have like a black rose on above their hearts, and you recognize it in each other, whether you recognize you're recognizing it, but like you're like, that person is my tribe. That person gets me. They understand why I feel this thing so deeply. And then the people who come from happy families, because indeed there are happy families. Like there's a Tolstoy quote, you know, it's like they are all happy in the same way, and the unhappy people are unhappy in their own ways. Who knows if that's true, but they happy families exist. I think that that rose is invisible to them. And I feel like Sam and the rabbit and William all have that black rose of trauma that causes them to act in maladaptive ways. All three of them are behaving badly, which of course I think makes for good fiction. I love to read fiction about people doing bad things. And so it is true. And I think William doesn't have the intent of being predatory toward vulnerable women, but he does recognize at least that he has a pattern of inviting vulnerable women into his life. And then when they don't suit his purposes or they turn out to be disappointing, and so he's constantly disappointed. Poor William, he just wants love, he thinks. And those women are constantly disappointing him, and it's so sad for him. And then he kind of has to like cast them out, and he knows that he is being stalked by various women because these vulnerable, poor, shattered, damaged women just can't give him up once they've gotten a taste of William Corwyn. So his life is very hard. It's a really tough life. I'm sorry, William's so amusing. I guess, I mean, William is like, to put a psychological term on it, he is a narcissist in the true sense. Like he's a narcissist in terms of having a personality disorder. And I don't think that gives anything away. And when I was researching the novel, there wasn't a lot of research I had to do because most of it was about, the writer life, which I've been living since I was 4 years old. But I did look up narcissism because I really wanted to understand it better. And I feel like we all know that guy, and like we all know the term narcissism. And these days, if you like are behind somebody in Starbucks who's too slow, you're like, oh my God, you're a narcissist. Order your almond milk latte, blah, blah already. Just get it over with. But I mean, the real narcissists are the people who cause a lot of damage because they can be so charming and so charismatic and so repeating this cycle where they will draw you in, love bomb you, find out you're human, discard you, like in this abusive way, and then do it all over again. And that's literally what William is doing here. So
yeah, I definitely felt he had a coherent logic. I mean, that's one of the things about writing villains. You want them, I remember someone saying to me one time, a sociopath, a psychopath who just wants to kill just because he wants to kill is boring. We need a logic. We need a reason. Like, where did this come from? Why, where did this impulse to, treat women badly come from? Or, whatever it is, or, and I truly felt like he believed he had logic and he was right. I mean, he really, he had a logic for what he was doing. And he, and so there's almost a certain amount of, pity because we come by our craziness, honestly. Right. Like, nobody grows up, as you say, in a happy family. And then just, when they turn 18, there's all of a sudden they start maladaptive behaviors. I mean, it's just, that doesn't happen. And so, but so I found him compelling, and I found the two of them going back and forth very, very compelling. And then the rabbit's kind of like almost there, sort of like this meta, like metadata, like I like running around. So now, one of the things I thought was also very interesting that you were talking about this writing life that you have lived for so long, and sort of like, I think probably in your blood the way caffeine is in mine. I thought it was very interesting that there's one scene in particular that really struck me, where there's a white man of a certain age, and he is trying to defend writing about his mothers. Yeah, I think he has two mothers. Yeah. And he's talking about how, he knows them better than he knows anyone. There are two mothers, and yet he's being accused of appropriation. And that theme came up a couple of times in your book, along with a lot of other like publishing, themes, jargon, like, I mean, just like all of it is just kind of like drenching the book. But I kind of wanted to talk to you a little bit about, uh, what's your sort of take on appropriation? I know what Williams is.
Yeah, William has a great take on appropriation. William
Yeah.
actually has a paragraph about appropriation where he says he thinks that it's all bullshit because,
Mhm.
sorry, I don't know if I'm allowed to swear or not, but really, but I mean, basically, he says it's a horse
Yeah.
pucky, and that's more what he would say anyway.
Mhm.
But he thinks it's bull until it happens to him because he thinks that Sam
Mhm.
is stealing his life story for
Yeah.
her latest novel to break her writer's block, which she kind of
Right.
is.
Mhm.
So. Um, and he does say that, white guys have had the big chair at the table for
Mhm.
too long. And if
Mhm.
you're writing a story at the expense of somebody else's story, then that shouldn't be done. But at the same time, if we were all writing only our own experience, then it would all be memoir and nobody would be making the imaginative leap into fiction. And
Right.
that is kind of my mouthpiece, honestly. Like I feel as though, I mean, I'm writing from a man's point of view, I'm
Mhm.
writing from a woman of impoverished background who doesn't look like me with a trauma background that is not mine. And you could certainly level the charge at me for like all of my books, that with the exception of my memoir, I've been appropriating people's lives because they aren't my lived experience. But I think that the leap of imaginative empathy that we take as fiction writers,
Mhm.
if we do it respectfully and if we're not choking off the oxygen from somebody's story who also is trying to tell that story and the person who actually lived that story or has that background, then I think it is a good thing to do. But if you're stealing somebody's story and it kind of shades over appropriation, shades into thievery,
Right.
then it's a bad thing. And Murder Your Darlings kind of questions where is that line and like where do you draw that line? What is the IP? Like what's the intellectual property line
Mhm.
of being inspired by somebody's life story? Is that
Mhm.
thievery? What if you make that your own? What if you do it respectfully? Like it's really a tough issue. Even the title, Murder Your Darlings, is a phrase that we all
Yeah.
know as writers. It
Mhm.
means to kill off the parts of the story that you love so much that aren't serving the story. And we mostly know it as Kill Your Darlings because William Faulkner you like stole the original, which is Murder Your Darlings, and then said Kill Your Darlings, and then Stephen King used it. And so it's become this kind of like telephone game of like Kill Your Darlings is the phrase. And when I found that out, I was like, I have to call this book Murder Your Darlings. That's actually the original phrase. So even the
Mhm.
title is about appropriation.
Mhm.
It's like a very
Yes.
thorny, dense issue that every writer has to make up his or her or their mind about at some point when you are working on a novel.
Mhm. Well, I just felt to me like that was a very current, it's a very current concern.
Mhm.
And I felt like it was tucked into your novel very delicately. I mean, feathered in, but I kept picking up on it. And, I think that, we all kind of come at it from different places. I mean, I write like 1870s London, and clearly that is not my lived experience. And I am writing from the position of a Irish man who's a Scotland Yard inspector. That is also not my experience. And so, where do you where but I also, we also talk about, you're supposed to write what you know, but it's not necessarily write what you lived. Maybe write what you've researched, maybe
Mhm.
what you've read a lot of books about, or what you've, inquired about and asked people about and interviewed people about, and, if you've done your homework. So it's kind of but it's a tricky thing. But there's that moment, and I think you handled it really well, where Sam and William are talking, and she says, "Well, wait a minute, is it appropriation? Because I just witnessed a suicide. So maybe I'm not writing about your sister's suicide. Maybe I'm writing about the one I just saw."
Mhm.
And so there's a lot of I mean, it's all part of the human experience. And so it's messy. It feels like you handled it like you're just putting it out there as this is messy. We all have to kind of like work through this and deal with it. So
Mhm. We all
yeah,
have to
I,
find our
I
own
really like that.
waterline. No, thank you so
Hmm.
much. I love the way you said feathered in and that we come by our craziness honestly or our dysfunction honestly. Like
Yeah.
I can't wait to read all of your books because I am loving the way that you're talking and I'm sure you write exactly the same way. So
Except for I write like an Irishman.
right, exactly, like sort of transposed. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think in addition to writing what you know, writing what you love is important. And
Hmm.
I'm very selfish that way. I won't write a book unless I really love the material because I'm spending 3 to 5 years with that book and then promoting it. So I think if you
Hmm.
love something, hopefully you're going to know enough about it and be handling it well enough that it won't offend other people. And
Right.
so maybe that is part of the answer to whether or not something is appropriated. But I also do realize, like, I'm a white chick talking about this, and that if I were writing from a woman of color's point of view, I would have to interrogate my own reasons for doing that, and why am I doing it, and what do I think I can bring to the table that is different,
Right.
and can contribute to a cultural and literary conversation.
Exactly. And I think it's bringing up the question, okay, why do I feel the need to do this? What am I going to add here? And those are great questions. I mean, and sometimes you can answer them. But just I think self-reflection as an author is very important. Thinking about, why am I writing about this particular thing? And then sometimes, I don't know if it's your experience, but when I sometimes get like three-quarters of the way through, I got three-quarters of the way through writing Under a Veiled Moon before I realized that what I was really writing about was regret.
Oh,
What do we do
interesting.
with it? What do we do with it? How do we
Mhm.
live with it? How do we live with the stupid things we've done, and you can't go back and change it? And but I didn't realize that until pretty far along.
Mhm.
Actually, it was my husband who was saying to me something about regret. And I was like, that's it. That's the
Right.
center of my book.
Yeah, that's
Um,
so interesting. Yeah,
yeah.
I usually know thematically what I'm writing about because I want the books to be weighted in some way. Like, I want this book in
Mhm.
particular, like Darlings, I think, since it is contemporary, and I have been told it's funny, and I think it is funny, and I hope it's entertaining, and I hope it brings people, joy and solace and information, and in tough times like that we're living in right now. So I hope
Mhm.
the book is like, Calgon, take me away. But it is weighted by a heart that is like a sort of a dark and tender heart. And I think that heart, and what I wanted to explore, was really Sam's codependency, and why she was so willing to trade her writerly identity away for a relationship. And when the relationship starts to go south, which it does because of appropriation and because William is William and Sam is Sam, she doubles down. And why? And that is something I have done in my life, not with every relationship, but with enough
Mhm.
of them that I'm like, okay, I need to look at this pattern. Why is that? And I figured that almost everybody would have lived that experience at some point, to say, like, the heart wants what it wants, and then giving it up for love. And then you realize that the love isn't going to work out. And you're like, but it is, though. But it's just gonna, though, because I love it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to keep putting my hand on the hot stove. I'm going to open the door and go in the dark basement, even though I know it's dark, and you just keep doing this. And if you haven't done it, then somebody who's done it or is doing it. And you're like, just stop that. Just stop it. And so I really wanted to interrogate that for Sam, like,
Mhm.
why is this happening, and how do you step out of that pattern, and is that even possible?
Yeah. And that's I think what I felt was, really the, strong emotional core. I did enjoy this book. I'll be honest, I read it in 2 days. I was flying through it, where I'm sitting there like in the middle of it, and my husband's like, is it time for dinner yet? Can we eat? Can I turn on the football game? I'm like,
Yeah.
no, go somewhere else. I'm reading. Um, but but it was also, it I think, because it's about writing, and because, I mean, and like I say, it's not just for writers. It is for anybody who has, pursued a profession and gotten to the point where they're fatigued, or not sure if they should still be doing it, or, they're just sort of drained, or, or someone who's just lonely and looking for, I really want a companion. And, what are we willing to do and give up, in exchange for that? So I felt like it was entertaining on one level, but I felt like there was a lot of heart, and a lot of like these, like that, even that question about appropriation. It's a significant issue. It's a significant question. It felt like it was all tucked in there. So, but I never felt like it was hammering me over the head either. So I felt like that was terrific.
Thank
So
you. I really appreciate that. And I love what you
yeah.
said about reading it in 2 days, because first of all, there's a great passage that I teach from Stephen King's Misery about the I gotta, like, when a book has the I gotta, it means I gotta keep reading this because I gotta find out what happened. And you let
Hmm.
the laundry go, and you let the dinner go, and
Hmm.
the dog needs to go, and you're like, I just gotta stay up until I finish this thing. So
Hmm.
if I have that, that's what I'm always aspiring to. And my
Hmm.
friend Mark Cecil, who is an author who wrote this great book called Bunyan and Henry, likened Darlings to an ice cream sandwich, and that I got away. He was like, I got to eat this before it melts.
It
Like, it's
melts.
like, he's like, a delicious ice cream sandwich you can cram into your mouth before it all melts. And I love that idea so much, but I hope that it also has some nutrients to it. So you're very kindly reassuring
Yeah.
me that those things
Yeah.
might
No,
be
I
true.
thought it was great. Yeah. So, so here's a question. that I sometimes like to ask. You mentioned Harriet the Spy. Can you talk a little bit about other books that you read as a child that just sang to you and that you think maybe shaped some of how you wrote, maybe even your first couple books?
Yeah, great question. So Harriet for sure, because she's still my friend. She
It's
was
like Anne of Green Gables is my friend because we both have
I
red
love
hair.
that. Yeah, I think those two would probably get along, even though Harriet,
Mhm.
she's a little bit thorny, but and Anna's
Yeah.
not more friendly. But Harriet was the first person to really make me feel like, oh, I see myself in a book. And we talk about feeling seen these days. Like
Mhm.
that's the thing. And I'm like, oh, I see you, Harriet, which is why I literally crept around in the bushes with a black and white composition book. Also, so my earlier books are the historical books are World War II novels, and it's because I read Diary of an Anne Frank very young. I'm half
Mhm.
Jewish, and so my whole life I was playing this game called What Would Have Happened to Me if like the Nazis came marching up my driveway in 1970s New Jersey, and I had a hiding place in my attic, literally that I outfitted with like Lorna Doones and peanut butter and water and a flashlight and books in case that happened. And now we are finding out what happens when the Nazis come marching into various places. But I also read this book very young called When Hitler Stole Pink Rabbit about the experiences of a German Jewish refugee child. Like she starts out in Germany with her family. She's, I want to say, 8 or 9 years old, and they flee to France, and she has to acclimate to this whole new culture. And just when she's learned to speak the language, and it's difficult, and she doesn't understand why they're doing it. Why do they have to move? Why do they have to leave everything behind, including the dog? Just when she has sort of made her way into being a French child, they have to move again to England. And that's the end of that book. Sorry, I just spoiled it for you guys. But I was very struck by that and I identified with it greatly. And again, like I had played this game even into adulthood of like, what would I do in that situation? What would I do if I saw somebody being taken away? What would I do if I were being taken away? So it was both kind of a morality question and a survival monkey bars in a
Mhm.
way that I was kind of working with all the time. And my first novel, Those Who Save Us, which is about a German woman, a non-Jewish German woman who becomes the mistress of an SS officer to save herself and her little daughter when he discovers her in the act of the resistance. And then the daughter's quest to find out what happened 50 years later, because the mom will never talk about it. That was very much inspired by me trying to exercise some of these questions and put them down on the page for the reader to answer for him or herself.
Oh, that's really cool. I can see you up in the attic with your Lorna Dunes
There, I ate a lot
and your
of
flashlight.
yeah.
Yeah.
Such a
Wow.
fun
That's
child,
terrific.
a really cheery
Sorry.
child. I was such
Yeah.
a cheerful child.
Oh,
Imagine.
yeah. Yeah, I know. I used to hide up in, we had a like a crawl space that I like to like to go in, and I did, take a flashlight up there. I took Fig Newtons, not
Oh
Lorna
yeah, they're
Doones,
just so
but
good. Oh,
yeah,
that's
I
so
know, weren't they? And
yeah.
but and just yeah, would sit there with my books and my stacks of books and all that kind of thing, and my brother would be like, "What are you doing up there?"
Mhm.
Um, so anyway, okay, well it's nearly 6:45, and so
Oh
I'm gonna
gosh.
just check back in with Patrick, and see if we have any questions, because I have some more questions for you, but I don't want to keep people from asking if we have some.
We'll have time for those because we haven't had a whole lot of questions come
Okay,
through.
all
Um,
right.
but I just wanted to throw in, we're all very similar in this respect because I used to go hide up in like, I guess I'm a typical product of suburbia because with construction sites when I was a little kid, I used to like hide away like up in the rafters of construction sites with my little books, and just spend the whole day up there.
That's
Okay,
very
that's
much
not safe.
I guess that's kind of a weird kid, I suppose, but no, it was great. Um,
Hmm.
one of the questions is, Jenna, can you tell us a little bit more about Mighty Blaze?
Oh, yeah. Thank you for asking about The Blaze. So, The Blaze is a company that I co founded in March 2020 with Caroline Levitt, who's a New York Times bestselling author, and she's great. And the two of us were watching the pandemic close in on our friends' book tours and shut them down. And we knew that like people have been working for a year, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years on these books and weren't going to be able to get them to the reading public. And both of us individually said, oh, hell no, and then came together and put together initially a bunch of social media pages so that authors could come and introduce their new books on Tuesdays when new books come out for no reason that anybody can figure out. And I remember saying to Caroline, each book is like a little light in this world that's being taken over by this strange darkness. And maybe if we put them all together, we can make a mighty blaze, and readers will know where to come to get new books every week, which they're going to need because we won't be able to leave our houses. And we were really like the only lifeboat rowing away from the Titanic, like just by luck and by instinct. And within the first week, we had like every author in the whole world coming saying, like, please, please feature my book. And we got great press really quickly, like from Oprah.com and Publishers Weekly and Washington Post. And we quickly grew into this company. I'd never wanted to run a company, nor did I have the skill set to do it, but I did it anyway. And we were running at one point like 9 weekly broadcasts on StreamYard, and we still do it like based on genre. So we still have like the Friday Frontliners and the Crime Time show and our debut Spotlight. And my friend Mark does Thoughtful Bro and interviews like he's interviewed Alexander Vindman and George Saunders, and a lot of debuts. We interviewed John Irving and Erica Jong and Cheryl Strayed. And so I basically have gotten to talk to every writer I've idolized in my whole life, except Stephen King, and I'm still going after him. But every Tuesday we feature the new books that are coming out, and we still have all of these shows. Like tomorrow, actually, I'm going to be on Crime Time with Hank Philip B. Ryan, talking about darlings on my own show, because that's, what I do. But it has been such a great joy to bring books to readers all across the world and all across the country. So even though the pandemic is over, it's still such a nice way to maintain that online community. And we have very steadfast viewers, and hope that we're bringing in more viewers all the time, because it's still such a great way to showcase books for people who can't leave their houses or don't want to leave their houses, or you don't want to put on pants, don't want to put on the hard pants, or just can't get to where your favorite author is reading in Sarasota or whatever, but we can bring that person to you.
Yeah, we found the same thing. I mean, it's had so many interesting ripple effects, and it's forced us all to kind of rethink what we do. We were always events driven, and we've been doing some version of streaming for a while, but you know, interviewing people that are all around the world, Australian authors, European authors, things that might not have really occurred to us, that we could do before the pandemic. So yeah, it's been great for the Poison Pen for sure.
Mhm.
A question about somebody was asking about the intriguing bit of text that is along the top of your wall and
Oh,
door.
oh, I don't know if you
That's
can see this, but it says the fox knows many things, but the hedgehog knows one big thing. And I don't know what that is. But when I moved into this apartment, which is described in Murder Your Darlings, and the way I got this apartment is exactly the way Sam gets her apartment. I live in an 1860s brownstone in the Back Bay in Boston, and there's no way a writer should be able to afford this apartment, and I really like barely can. But when it was on the market, there was a nonagenarian who lived here with her boyfriend, who was like the foremost Edgar Allan Poe expert in New England. And
wow.
they had to put it on the market because it had stairs up to a sleeping loft and he couldn't handle the stairs. And the apartment was full of tech bros who were going to knock out the walls and make it an open floor plan concept. And this is the original ballroom of the building. It has like marquetry floors and a big stone fireplace. And the lady was a children's book illustrator. And so there were all of these crazy like murals around here and all of these like beautiful moldings. And she said, I will sell this apartment to you, the writer, because you need the bookshelves. And in the other room, there are 18-foot bookshelves. And she said, on 2 conditions: you cannot dispose of the library stairs, and you can't paint over the mural about the fox and the hedgehog. And I was like, why would I do that? I love the fox and the hedgehog. So, and there actually is a frieze in my bathroom of a rabbit that has been there since I moved in here. So it is like this magical place to live. And one of these closets is actually like a Narnia closet. It's like 4 closets that go all the way back into the guts of the building. And I'm convinced, with no evidence whatsoever, that it was Underground Railroad.
Could have been.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, this is like Abolition Central, so I would not be surprised. Yeah.
Have you, I live in a 1920s house, so it's not
And then,
old by East Coast standards by any stretch, but Do you ever find any interesting things in the house?
Great
Any?
question. I don't. I mean, I'm kind of scared of our sub basement. We do have one. If the apocalypse comes, that's where I'll be, but I won't go down there otherwise because there are probably rats down there because Boston is a seaside town. I'm sure there are many interesting things there, but I do think there are spirits in this apartment. And when I first moved in here, I felt like so strongly a presence, and I would come downstairs in the morning and go into my library where there's a glass top coffee table, and the top would be moved off the foundation, almost falling over, and there were fingerprints on the other underside of the glass top. And I would say to my then boyfriend, "Did you do that? Like, do this?" He was like, "Why would I do that? Who? I don't know." And one day I was holding a writing workshop in here, and one of the students, one of the novelists, was a medium from North Carolina, and she said, "Do y'all ever feel a presence in this place?" And I said, "I do. I think that there was a young man who lived here during the Civil War who was a hemophiliac, and that is why he didn't go fight, and he collected butterflies. And I don't know why I think that." And she's like, "Yeah, that's kind of what I'm getting too." So I feel like this very like pleasant young man kind of drifts through here every once in a while, and I can feel him. And I have just said to him, like, "Please don't manifest because that will scare me, but like otherwise you're completely welcome."
That's fascinating.
That's terrific.
We've asked that question of so many writers, that do places where traumatic events occurred, historical buildings, historical, battlefields, do they retain some sort of residue uh, from those past events? Like, Karen, have you been down to Bisbee, Arizona at all?
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm back here, but Bisbee, they had all this violent labor history and a lot of tumultuous things in the state. And I always get kind of a weird vibe down in Bisbee. I don't know why.
Hmm.
I
Yeah,
love it.
it's a great spot. I mean, I haven't been down there in probably about 10 years. We took the kids down so that they could go into the mine.
Yeah.
They have it where you can actually get onto a little train, and they give you a yellow jacket and they give you a hard hat to wear that has a flashlight on it, a headlamp, and you go into the mine. And they pause and they say, "If anyone's feeling a little claustrophobic, let us know because you're going to want to get out now." And nobody did get off our train. And then they keep going. And there is a sense of like, there's a thickness to the air. There's a feeling, and they have all of the things. I mean, they even had like, for example, a cart like that, that would, that had wheels, but it was their latrine. It was like the traveling latrine that they would pull in and then take back out again. And I mean, all of these things that feel otherworldly. And I think that, I mean, when I bump into stuff like that, it feels very, I don't know, evocative, engaging. I kind of think about a story that comes, it kind of invites a story, I guess.
Yeah.
Those kinds of things.
Let's see. I'm getting some questions coming in here.
Okay.
Sorry to digress, everybody.
No, I
Okay.
100% believe in that vibe. Oh, I wanted to shout out also my friend Michelle Martin, who might be watching, who's a historian and who curated the Little House on the Prairie Museum in Independence, Kansas, where she let me come and hang out with her for the day. So if you're watching while you're looking, sorry, Patrick, I just wanted to say hi to
I
Michelle.
was just about to ask her one of her
Very cool.
questions.
Oh, okay, there you go. I'm psychic, just like my apartment, sending good
Yeah.
vibes.
And Michelle says, Jenna, was it difficult for you to make the switch from historical fiction to the thriller mystery genre? And what is next for you in your writing life?
Yeah, great question. It was scary because I didn't know if my agent and editor would approve of me making that switch because I had built up a brand as a historical novelist and spent 20, odd years doing that. And who knows if that audience is going to be receptive to you suddenly moving over to the thriller track. But I think of Darlings more as psychological suspense, and it actually shares a lot of elements with my historical fiction. Like there's been a lot of death in my historical fiction. It's about Nazis, of course. And my first book was basically X-rated. So there's always been a lot of sex in my novels, a lot of death in the novels. I moved it into different clothing. And in some ways, I feel like, Karen, the passage that you picked out before about the sort of thorn of pain that William notices in the hearts of all of his female companions, like, do all writers have that? I couldn't say whether that's true or not, but I realized, because I've been kind of crunching on this question, like, why does the thriller lane seem to suit me so well, that I am somebody who is predilected toward the worst case scenario. And I don't know if it's epigenetic, like being a half Jewish girl who like read Diary of Anne Frank so young, or like, is I interviewed Holocaust survivors for the Spielberg Foundation. Like, did I do that because I'm predilected that way, or did I do that because, or like, am I that way because of all of these stories I carry around? But I am the person who's walking down the street on a perfectly beautiful sunny day and think, oh my God, what if a car suddenly comes around the corner and runs over my dog? And I'm like, Jenna, it's really nice out. Be present. And I'm looking at a rose bush. I'm like, I bet there are rats in that rose bush. I'm like, Jenna, be present. And so I finally realized, like, why not just put that to work? And so maybe I'm siphoning now the sort of natural instincts I have into a story that is going to make other people give them, I think, what thriller readers want, which is not just a puzzle to solve. And I do think thrillers are like literary Sudoku in a lot of ways, but they're also like, there, but for the grace of God go I. And how can I avoid this scenario? How can I avoid the stalker? How can I avoid the killer in the basement? How can I avoid the car that comes around the corner out of nowhere? I think that's why people like to read thriller, true crime, mystery. And that is what I am here to provide. So the next things that I'm going to write, I think, are also going to be thrillers. And I'm kind of rolling 3 of them around in my head right now. And we'll see which ones kind of roll into the mouse holes in my head and disappear, and like which ones kind of stay front and center. And that's what I'll start when I'm finished with my tour.
Getting back into the subject of stalkers, and anybody who's even vaguely in the public eye has had some experience with this. And I'm assuming you have, Jenna, and Karen, you probably have had. And these days, with social media and how authors are so, they're so accessible to readers and fans. Um, yeah, it can be a very serious situation sometimes. Did you draw upon any of that uh, when you were writing the book?
I did. Actually, Sam and William have a conversation about the rabbit after an incident in which they're together at a meeting, like one of William's writer support group meetings, which is called the Darlings. And the rabbit shows up, and William recognizes her and chases her and can't catch her. And he says to Sam, "That was the rabbit. She's my stalker." And Sam's experience of being stalked is actually my experience of being stalked, where I had somebody who was like super interested in me because he read one of my books, and then I blocked him on email, and then he moved to social media, and then I blocked him on social media, and then he sent a naked drawing of me to my house. That not that he had actually seen me naked, I don't think, but he imagined it. It was actually quite a good drawing. It was like the drawing in Titanic that Jack does of Rose. I wish I looked like this. I'm going to show this to my grandkids. But it was, of course, quite disconcerting because I don't give out my address. I don't tell people where I live. Like, that's a very, very deliberate decision. Even in photos of the building, like, you could figure it out if you are dedicated, of course, but I make sure that there aren't any identifying factors. And so that was tough. And then he sent me a letter that said he could be at my house in 4.52 hours if the traffic wasn't bad. And at that point, I changed my locks, and he went away, and I, just stopped responding. I didn't give any oxygen to this, and he went away. But writers and public figures aren't always so lucky. And we were talking earlier about the wonderful Hank Philippi Ryan, who is like the queen of thrillers, and her last book is called All This Could Be Yours, about an author on book tour who's being stalked because part of being on book tour is to tell people where you are so they can come and see you. And
Right.
so, unlike actors, who people form a similar emotional relationship with, I think, if when people are kind of unstable, they're like, "Oh my God, you're my person, you're mine." But the actors don't tell you where they're going to be, but the writers have to tell you where they're going to be if they're doing readings. And so, Hank's book expertly plays on that scenario. It's such a good book, and I love the fact that we're both writing about book tour at the same time while we're on book tour. Um, but yeah, it is disconcerting because you can't really do much about a stalker either. Like, police can't do much about it, which in Murder Your Darlings I also use to my advantage. I mean, the rabbit can kind of do whatever she wants, really.
Yeah, did you happen to see Baby Reindeer?
Yes, I love Baby Reindeer. Yes. I
That
was
was
working on Darlings when it came out, and I was like, the rabbit reminds me a lot of that character, except she's not that unhinged, I think. But I thought it was genius.
Absolutely. Um, let's see here. There were a couple comments about people were sort of weighing in on the subject of appropriation and um, yeah, I listened with interest to your discussion about that and I've always thought that, that advice to write what if people only wrote what they knew, we wouldn't have half the great books that are out there. We wouldn't have Madame Bovary. We wouldn't have any number of books if you were only had to write from your own very narrow, limited perspective. And I've always thought that books should be judged on their own merits. If the writer pulls it off, great. If they don't, but anyway, that's my take on that. I think
I
that the
think
whole, go ahead.
I was just gonna say that I think we were talking also about this, writing is I think fundamentally an act of empathy, which is the exact opposite of narcissism. There's a really great little book by Alice Miller called The Drama of the Gifted Child, which is about the narcissistic personality and the deprivation that happens when a child isn't seen and then goes on to become an adult who then cannot see other people except in relationship to herself, and so on, and it gets perpetuated over the. But I think that acts of empathy are a way of breaking that, and to the extent that we can, we just try to listen really hard and research and pay attention when people are talking. And yeah, I think it's important. And I think writing is an act of empathy that I try and hang on to that. So
I
Jenna, do you
agree.
mind? Do you mind if we
yeah.
ask Karen about her upcoming book? She was talking a little bit before we got started, and it's such a fascinating subject.
I would love to know.
Yeah. So the book is called An Artful Dodge. It's being put up by Soho Press. It'll come out on June 2nd. I will be at the Poison Pen that night at 7 o'clock. And it is about a all women thieving gang that operated in London in the 1870s, south of the Thames River in Southwark. Elephant and Castle was actually a famous stagecoach inn that was sort of at the hub, at the center of a wheel of roads that went to Canterbury and Dover and different parts of London and so on. And it was known for thieving. It was where the unwary traveler might get dropped off by the stagecoach. And if you were sort of sized up and, oh, you're wealthy, okay, well, we're going to sit you in a nice comfy chair by the fire and we're going to give you some wine and maybe lace it with some laudanum. And then the next morning you wake up and everything is gone. And it was also the scene for what they called dragging, which was, the stagecoach would pull in, it has all of the people would put all their luggage up on top and so on. And people would jump on the back of the stagecoach and then pull the luggage down as the stagecoach is pulling away. You're laughing, but the stuff is real. And
I know
and
it.
I know it
Right.
was just, I mean, all of these stories that surrounded this inn. And so later on, the gang, so it was primarily a gang of men, but then the women wanted to get involved. And with the rise of the department stores in London's West End, beginning in the 1850s and 60s, this group of women thieves learned how to shoplift very effectively.
Mm.
And so they had special pockets that went all the way down to their hemlines and lay against the crinolines so that they could just stuff all kinds of things in there. But what was also interesting is this is the same time when people were being transported to the penal colonies in Australia. You remember the hulks from Great Expectations, the big ships that would sit in the Thames and so on. But when they ran out of room in the prisons, they decided, well, we want to make sure that England plants its flag in Australia because France was racing to do it as well. And I think also maybe Belgium. But at any rate, they wanted to plant their flag. And so they basically would take prisoners, English prisoners, and ship them down there to, they had penal colonies on both coasts. The one on the west coast was Swan River. But at any rate, and the ratio was 10 men to 1 woman. And so when they could find women thieves, they tried them instantly, put them on a ship, and as soon as they got 100, they sent it down. And this is all true. And so you're reading these stories about these women who are literally sentenced for between 7 and 14 years for stealing 7 feet of ribbon.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, in my story, one of these women who was caught around 1850 or 59, I think it is. She is in the penal colony she's in Swan River for 20 years. And she comes back and she wants the ring.
Oh,
It's
nice.
hers, but it's hers by birthright, and she wants it. And she's also very angry and resentful. And so she ropes Kit Jimison, who's my heroine, into one final dodge. And the research was phenomenally fun. I mean, I found out about the whole entire thing because I was over in London. I happened to be, it was pouring rain. I mean, like sleety pouring London rain, like it does in December. And I was there with my daughter, Julia, who was over there doing a semester at Oxford. And we dodged into this great Scotland Yard hotel. And there there's a fantastic foyer that has glass cases with all of the memorabilia from Scotland Yard from the 1800s. I mean, boots that somebody ran away in, mugshots, knives, truncheons, police whistles, the whole bit. And the bar is called the 40 Elephants. And when we walked in, they had a little QR code, and so you could find out who the 40 Elephants were, and they were these women thieves. Anyway, long explanation about what my book is about, but I love these women. I think they're fantastic and they're fun, and I had a great time writing the book. So
it's
yeah,
so much fun and so interesting. It reminds me, it intersects. It doesn't remind me of, because I hate it when people are like, oh, that book reminds me of your book, reminds me of this book.
Yeah.
But it intersects a little bit with Christina Baker Klein's The Exiles.
Yes, that's it. Yes. I read that book.
Yeah, but I love the texture of what you're telling us about the thievery in London and the vengeance angle and the female thief angle and the petticoats with the long pockets. It's just all very luscious stuff.
It's fun.
There's some poetry to it as well, to the craft of thievery and the kind of audacity of a lot of the acts that they do.
Yeah.
Oh, I can't wait to read this. June 2nd.
June 2nd.
Great. Maybe you'll come on the Blaze.
I would love to. That would be fun.
Okay, all right. I'll back channel you about that. I'm going to make a note on my phone, like right now, to do that. So if I'm looking rudely away from you, it's because I wanted to make a note about it. But yes, I totally want to do that.
Did the Blaze start out as kind of a one-person operation, or were there a group of you? Were you doing all the interviews when it started?
Oh, heck no. No, it was me and Caroline, and we had a team of 35 volunteers working for us. So hold on, I'm just gonna keep writing this down. Okay, good. Boop, it's in there. If I don't write something down, it goes out of my head instantly, like it's just gone. But no, because the Blaze blew up so quickly, we had a ton of volunteers and everybody was housebound. And I have been running the same novel workshop for over 20 years. People come in and out as the demands of their books require them to, and many of them are published and a couple of them are still aspiring. They're all really talented. And suddenly all these very talented people couldn't go to work. And so everybody jumped onto the Blaze. So my workshop family is also my Blaze family. And then we just kind of tractor beamed in more people and people kept volunteering for it. Like we had an amazing PR maven named Laura Rossi, who's still our PR head of PR. And she kept coming to me in the first couple of weeks saying, like, let me do your PR. And I was too busy. I was like, I don't have time to, I can't do PR. I can't even think about it. Thanks for volunteering, whatever. And she was persistent, as a good PR person should be. And finally I was like, great, do our PR. And she's just a powerhouse. She's phenomenal. But it was that kind of thing. It drew in all these good people who became like family to me. So I'm just so grateful for that community.
That's awesome. Well, shoot, I guess we're kind of running out of time here, but Jenna, it's a real pleasure to have you on the program here. And Karen, thanks so much for coming on and interviewing Jenna. Really appreciate it.
Of course, my pleasure. My pleasure.
I'm gonna make a good heart hand after all this time, after all these years. There we go. Thank
and
you.
We'll have to get you out here in person one of these days.
Please, I would love it. I'll be there tomorrow.
This time of year, it's pretty ideal.
Yeah, I know.
Yes.
Rub it in, you guys. That's fine.
You'll have the last laugh come June.
Right, and then you can come visit. No, actually, I need to be out there for Karen's launch, right, at the Poison Pen. So.
Yeah, that would be handy.
It would.
It'd be fun.
It would.
Well, congratulations on the book.
Thank
and
you.
Thanks again. Thanks everybody for tuning in tonight. And have a great evening.
Thank you so much,
Patrick.
This
You
is
bet.
so wonderful. Thanks, you guys. Good night,
Thanks.
everybody.
Night.